18 SBDs took off from the USS Enterprise on a routine scouting mission to fly ahead and land at Ford Island. The Enterprise lay 200 miles west of Oahu and was heading home.
No target. I'll continue patrolling. What's that smoke? The ship's burning. Zero's on my stick! Maneuver! We need to turn back! I'm so down!
I feel that a surprise attack, submarine, air, or combined, on Pearl Harbor is a possibility. And we are taking immediate practical steps to minimize the damage inflicted and to ensure that the attacking force will pay. Husband E. Kimmel, Commander-in-Chief, U.S. Fleet. First call to colors had been sounded. About 0757, explosions were heard on the end of Ford Island, abreast Dry Dock Number 1. When the second explosion took place, it was realized that an air raid was in progress. The commanding officer, C.M. Cook, Jr., U.S.S. Pennsylvania, report of Pearl Harbor attack. On December 7, 1941, Japanese carrier aviation attacked U.S. bases in Pearl Harbor. Several hours later, on December 8 local time, the Japanese attacked Wake Island. On the very first day, bomb attacks destroyed most of the aircraft stationed on the island. The bombings continued for several days. On December 11, the Japanese attempted to land on the island. Some of the 4th Fleet ships headed towards Wake Island. The 4 remaining VMF-211 airplanes received an order to attack enemy ships.
Can you hear me? Do you copy? Yeah, I hear you. Sound off. No enemy aircraft detected. I repeat, we did not detect any enemy aircraft. Roger that. Looks like the Japanese are retreating. Major, attack cargo ship. I repeat, attack cargo ship, sector M9. Roger that. Let's go down and join the party. Roger that, sir. one hell of a beating. Turn to base. Yes, sir. The Japanese won't forget this day. Wake won't be an easy prey for them. I can't see Elrod's plane. Where is he? I see him landing on the shore. Looks like he had been shot down. We got fewer and fewer planes.
After we ceased firing, the whole fleet having fled, and there being no other targets to engage, the cruiser lay broadside to the sea, still pouring steam and smoke from her side. She had a definite port list. After some time, she got slowly underway, going a short distance, stopping, and continuing again. She was engulfed in smoke when she crept over the horizon. The unexpectedly strong resistance put up by the Wake Island coastal artillery and remaining aircraft forced the Japanese fleet to retreat. The island's garrison suffered very few losses. Realizing that the first landing attempt was premature, the Japanese continued bombing the island. 3 Wake Island airplanes were launched when the radar picked up approaching enemy planes.
Stick to the plan. Captain Elrod and I meet the first group. Lieutenant Davidson meets the second group. Any questions? No, sir. Then off we go. Good luck, guys.
Our escape from serious damage may be attributed to the effectiveness of AA fire and the heroic actions of fighter pilots, who would never fail to push home attacks against enemy fire. The performance of these pilots is deserving of all praise. They have attacked air and surface targets alike with equal abandon, but none has been shot down is a miracle. Their planes, 2 now remain, are full of bullet holes. 2 forced landings, fortunately without injury to pilots, have occurred with loss of planes. Commander Winfield Scott Cunningham, officer in charge, all naval activities, Wake Island. Wake Island, fighting alone, still stood its ground. 2 Japanese carriers, Soryu and Hiryu, which took part in the attack on Pearl Harbor, were sent to the coasts of Wake Island to back up the second landing attempt. On December 22, 39 planes were launched from the carriers to subdue Wake Island's resistance. The 2 remaining Wake Island airplanes entered a losing battle against the superior enemy forces.
Yeah, I copy, Lieutenant. Enemy aircraft in sight. Sector D12. Roger that. Taking a course to Sector D12. Don't attack it alone. Okay. Meet you in Sector F12. Roger, Matt.
They came back at 12:25 a.m. 33 bombers came in from the west, bombed Peel Island. Sergeant Wright was killed, 4 wounded on the rangefinder. We went out at night and moved the guns into coastal defense position as it was getting pretty hot. December 23, they came back with several ships. We were heavily shelled and bombed. The Japanese began landing at 3 a.m. And did we mow them down? The surrender took place at 8 a.m. Claude Davis Howes, Wake Island fireman. To gain control of the Coral Sea, Japanese command sent a naval force to Tulagi Island. The Japanese were hoping to establish a naval and air base on the island. On May 4th, the aircraft carrier U.S.S. Yorktown entered the region. Bombers were launched from the carrier to stop the Japanese landing on Tulagi. Around noon, the pilots noticed several enemy hydroplanes. Yorktown fighters were sent to search and destroy them.
Heading towards the island. Maintain vigilance. The planes that attacked our bombers could be anywhere. I see them. Right into our hands. Excellent. Attack! Leave no survivors. I think that's it. Yorktown, this is Lieutenant Fenton. Do you read me?
I copy, Lieutenant.
Reporting the situation. Enemy planes destroyed. Repeat, enemy hydroplanes destroyed.
Roger that. Great job.
The ship is leaving the island.
Looks like she's alone. Let's stay a while. Attack the deck. Looks like it. We can head back now.
The conduct of the air group personnel cannot be praised too highly. In the space of 5 days, they made 5 attacks on enemy forces, 3 on May 4th, and 1 each on May 7th and 8th. Despite the many hardships and dangers involved, the pilots and other personnel lost none of their enthusiasm, high morale, or aggressive spirit. Their performance was an outstanding exhibition of courage, determination, and will to win. Lieutenant Commander Oscar Pedersen, Yorktown Air Group. On May 6, 1942, after completing the landing operation in Tulagi, the Japanese aircraft carrier Shoho returned to the theater of war. She was followed by ships, which were headed towards Port Moresby. U.S. carriers Lexington and Yorktown, located further south, were searching desperately for the enemy fleet. On the morning of May 7, one of the U.S. pilots detected Japanese ships off the coast of Mishima. Lexington and Yorktown carriers immediately launched an airstrike.
Good job, guys.
Photographs were obtained during the latter phases of the attack, showing only the bow of the carrier. The rest of it completely enveloped in smoke, splashes, and flames. It's difficult to conceive any other result than the complete destruction of this carrier, and the personnel loss must have been close to 100%. From the bow silhouette in the photographs, plus the cutaway flight deck, the pilot's descriptions, and radio intelligence, it is believed that this carrier was the Ryukaku. Captain Frederick Carl Sherman, U.S.S. Lexington. June 4, 1942. Japanese forces start their operation to occupy Midway Island. A surprise attack was key to the operation's success. However, Commander-in-Chief for Pacific Ocean Areas, Admiral Chester W. Nimitz, began preparations to defend Midway several months previously, basing his decision on intelligence data. While Japanese forces were approaching Midway from the east, 2 U.S. fleets were heading to their assembly point, Point Luck. On June 4, several minutes before Midway radar alerted of the incoming attack, PBY pilot Lieutenant 80 noticed the Japanese carrier fleet. His message read, 2 carriers and battleships bearing 320 degrees, distance 180, course 135, speed 25 knots. Immediately after his message arrived, the U.S. forces started positioning themselves for the attack. Japanese fleet outnumbered the U.S. forces, so fleet commanders Fletcher and Spruance agreed it was crucial to launch an all-out attack as soon as possible.
Were lost. We have to fly on our own. Keep the formation, guys. The Japanese fleet must be close by. We should have spotted them already. They must have changed course. Try to find them. Must be somewhere nearby. Keep flying. Target the carrier to the right. We'll take care of the rest. Let's give them hell, guys! Are we really that good, or was that just luck? Time will tell.
Preparations for a counterstrike against the enemy had continued on board our 4 carriers throughout the enemy torpedo attacks. One after another, planes were hoisted from the hangar and quickly arranged in the flight deck. There was no time to lose. At 10:20, Admiral Nagumo gave the order to launch when ready. On Akagi's flight deck, all planes were in position with engines warming up. The big ship began to turn into the wind. Within 5 minutes, all her planes would be launched. 5 minutes. Who would have dreamed that the tide of battle would shift completely in that brief interval of time? Captain Mitsuo Fujita, IJN Akagi. Both Japanese counterstrikes hit the same aircraft carrier. Although Yorktown was dead in the water, both TF-16 carriers remained undamaged. While the second wave of the Yorktown attack was heading to Hiryu, Enterprise and Hornet were getting ready to deliver a final blow to the Japanese carrier fleet. After the earlier attack against Enterprise, only 24 planes were able to strike the enemy.
Without cover again? We suffered heavy losses in the battle this morning, and Yorktown was badly damaged. They need the fighters to safeguard the fleet. We will have to fly alone. We did it once already. I just hope we can pull it off one more time. Remember the plan. Do what we did this morning. Attack with the sun behind us and take their defense by surprise. Target the carrier and launch the attack. think we got it? It took at least 3 bombs. We were flying off. I saw it burning. Yeah, then it's done for.
Through the skill and devotion to serve for the armed forces of all branches in the Midway area, our citizens can now rejoice that a momentous victory is in the making. After the Midway battle, which was the turning point of the conflict, U.S. forces launched an offensive attack in the Pacific Ocean. Operation Watchtower was the second major offensive attack by the U.S. Army in the war. The goal of the operation was to take Guadalcanal and the Florida Islands. Air forces stationed on the Enterprise, Saratoga, and Wasp were to start the operation. Their goal was to destroy the enemy air force and conduct bombing strikes at strategic points in the operation area.
Number 3, anything? No, negative, nothing. Roger that! Our goal is the coast of Florida Island. We need to clear the area for landing. I see float planes on the ground trying to take off. We need to stop them. Let's head back to the ship. Down there.
The landing started.
Japanese will have one hell of a morning.
We will defend to the last man. Pray for our success. Last message of the Yokohama Air Group Commander, Captain Miyazaki Shigetoshi. We cleared out to keep from getting shot down by our own fighters who were going wild and shooting at everything in sight. VS-71 War Diary. The Guadalcanal and Tulagi landing was successful. However, it was just the beginning of the confrontation. In October 1942, Japan moved 15,000 soldiers to Guadalcanal, making it possible for the U.S. forces to launch an offensive attack. The attack targeted Henderson Field, an airport captured by the U.S. forces, as it was the most important strategic point on the island. 1st Marine Division was in charge of defending the airport. Japanese forces planned to attack U.S. defenses from 3 directions, backed by air and artillery support.
Trying to cross the river. Come on, guys. Let's not make it easy for them.
combat flights did we do today? I already lost count.
What does it matter? Anyway, it's better than sitting in the trenches waiting to get hit on the head by a bomb or a shell. Stay focused, guys. This isn't sightseeing.
Our doctrine was to attack. The Japanese would catch fire very readily. Sometimes they would even blow up. Sometimes they would just drop out of formation and glide down into the water. Although they were in the field every day and many hits in the runway, the engineers would fill up the hole and you'd be landing 15 minutes later. Major John L. Smith's after-action interview. Henderson Field Defense stood its ground against the enemy. Meanwhile, the Japanese fleet, counting 4 aircraft carriers against 2 U.S. carriers, was approaching Guadalcanal. Shortly before the U.S.S. Hornet was alerted of the approaching enemy forces, the airplanes of the 2nd Combat Air Patrol were launched to protect the U.S. fleet.
Contact with an enemy group. Damn, there's a swarm of them flying towards you. They're about 60 miles away from us, which means they'll be here soon. Of 12 dive bombers incoming from the northeast at 6,500 feet. It started! Can't land you guys. Fly over to TF-16. Bomber, incoming from the northeast at 5,000 feet.
Damn!
Looks like we got more work, guys.
We searched the sky with apprehension. There were only a few planes in the air in comparison to the numbers launched several hours before. Planes lurched and staggered onto the deck, every single fighter and bomber bullet. As the pilots climbed wearily from their cramped cockpits, they told of an unbelievable opposition, of skies choked with anti-aircraft shell bursts and tracers. Lieutenant Commander Okamiya Mazataki, Rear Admiral Kakuta's Air Staff Officer. You're seeing the greatest carrier duel of history. Perhaps it will never happen again. Rear Admiral Thomas C. Kincaid, Commander of Task Force 16.
The Marines landed on Guadalcanal on August the 8th. Japanese positions and the airfield were continuously attacked from the air from that moment. Both sides continued to send reinforcements to the island for months. As the scale of the battle continued to grow, it became obvious that the battle for Guadalcanal would forever turn the tide of the war. The campaign involved nearly all branches of the armed forces. Aircraft carriers and other warships exchanged blows. Warplanes from both sides engaged in hour-long dogfights. Infantry fought desperate battles in the disease-ridden jungle. Even a few tanks managed to traverse the virtually impenetrable terrain and join the fray. The Americans fought tooth and nail and eventually gained the upper hand, losing nearly 7,000 men in the campaign. Japanese losses numbered nearly 31,000. Two more carrier battles that took place during the Guadalcanal campaign further exacerbated the Japanese situation. More experienced Navy pilots were irreplaceably lost. A year after Pearl Harbor, less than half of the December 7th veterans were still alive. They were being replaced with novices straight out of flight school. In a single year, Japan experienced an incredible mix of triumph and failure. Carrier-based war, started by Japan, was lost no sooner than it had begun. Even before Pearl Harbor, the U.S. government ordered 6 new Essex-class aircraft carriers. In contrast, the Japanese had only 1 new carrier in the works. They had nothing with which to replace their losses. However, by March 1, 1943, Japan still occupied vast territories. The Japanese Army and Navy were working on new plans to reverse the course of the war in the Pacific. The war was not over yet.